My name is Blessed Chinatu Oji. I am SofaDonDo's National PRO, and this is a Zoom dialogue. Yes, this is the first in the history of STD. This is in commemoration of the International Youth Day, IYD, with themed Youth Engagement for Global Action. There's a sub-theme for STD, which is youth engagement against sexual exploitation in institutions of learning. So we have a lineup of speakers, site speakers, who will be doing justice to the topics we've shared to them. So I'll just quickly remind you that if you're not talking, please mute your mic so we don't have back. And if you need to ask a question after each speaker speaks, you could write it, we would read it, or drop it on the SDD volunteers group chat. So very quickly, I'll hand over to Barrister Arinze to take us. Before I do that, I'll read his bio. He'll be taking us on advocacy as a tool of engagement, ensuring existing laws against sexual exploitations are implemented, a clear path to justice for survivors or would-be survivors. So, Barrister Renzo Diari is a legal practitioner, public relations expert, and education consultant. Arinze is interested in seeing young people make positive impact and keep up their struggles for a safer future. In addition, he is passionate about ensuring that they do not suffer harassment or intimidation of any sort. Arinze is the immediate past national coordinator of SofaDonDo, and currently he serves actively as a volunteer in Lagos chapter. So please let's make welcome Barrister Arinze to take up the floor. Thank you. So Barrister Arinze, you're on.
All right. Thank you very much for time and opportunity. This kind of event program is one that is always, I look forward to doing, particularly when it concerns the youth. For me, really, when I sit back and hear people talk about yesterday, I marvel because as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing in my books that is good old days. Tomorrow is always better than yesterday. The next day will be better than tomorrow. So as long as the youths are concerned, it is important they appreciate the fact that they are in charge of the tomorrow. So because we have them, we're very assured that tomorrow will be better. The question is, do we have the youth who are desirous to make tomorrow better? That is always the issue we have. I'll be using Nigeria and Africa while I'm having this discussion. So problem is, are our youths ready for tomorrow? Are they ready to be the change that we want to see in the society? Have they done enough? Yes, I know they've done enough. I know they are trying their best, but they really have done enough as far as I'm concerned. So they need to do more. How can they do more? They can do more by being part of the change. How can you be part of the change? Advocacy is a first tool. Advocacy is a first tool of engagement. Permit me to share. Host, can you allow me share screen, please?
Okay, just a minute.
Right. So while he's hopefully he will allow me to share screen.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go. Good. Right. Okay, sorry. Right. Okay, so I think I'm good now. Like Chinatu said, for today's the topic, this is not my topic, this is the theme for today. So it says time to stop exploitation in tertiary institution. That is the theme for today. So for me, I'm going to talk on advocacy as a tool of engagement, ensuring existing laws against sexual exploitations are implemented, and a clear path to justice for survivors and will-be survivors. Now, First is for us to agree on how to go about our advocacy. What is advocacy? Is it all about confrontation? Is it all about fighting? Is it all about subtle coercion? And what is it about? So for me, advocacy is an activity that involves an individual or group that aims to change, or influence decisions within political, economic, and social institutions. So it can be just you. That is when sometimes you see people, one man, we call them one man advocacy group, or you can be you and someone else. It can be as a group like SofaDonDo. These are ways to get people involved and see how they can change the society. Now, there are methods and platforms you can use. I know I have a time frame, so I'm trying to work so that I don't get to take other people's time. There are methods and platforms you can use while you're doing advocacy. So you can go through by media campaign, you can go by publications for those who are into research, writing, and all of that. You can do that by public speaking. You can as well tell a friend that will tell a friend whose friend will tell a friend. So the word of mouth keeps going. The important thing is that you have the information to pass down to the people. You have the information to give to the people. You have a course that you are pushing on for, and you are maintaining that course. And then for today, like I said, tomorrow is always better. So today we have the social media. We didn't have the social media in the past. So these days you can reach more people. In the past, we used to wait for letters in our villages. Somebody will write from the city. Then you go to the teacher's, headmaster's house. That is the story my grandfather told me. You go to the headmaster's house or to the church to wait for your letter and get someone to read it for you and all of that. But today we have social media. Social media has helped us. That outlet has helped us. You can reach someone in Abuja from Lagos without just a click of the button. In America from Lagos, in UK from America. So it's all there for us to use. It depends on how we've decided to use them. So it is a brilliant tool, to engage people. The question is, which one do you choose to do? Which one you prefer? All of them are good. It depends on which you want you or your organization to use. Now, what are the things how do you engage people? What is the best possible way to engage people? So for me, I have you can want to engage small groups. You can want to engage in the big form, but the important thing is that you have to target the system that you want to change. You have to target that system. So you need to know what is it in that system that you want to change. You have to participate in the agenda setting. You don't just have to sit back on your own. You have to get involved. You have to find out what's going on in that regard. You have to be a participant in the agenda setting. You have to find, and I'll relate this to the sexual exploitation that I'll come back to in a few minutes. These are the things you need to do. You have to also propose policy solutions. Oftentimes I read at people criticizing things, people talking about things, people questioning things without as well providing solutions. I love it when we provide solutions. I love it when we tell somebody, this can't take us too far, but I am thinking we should do it this way. I am thinking we should try this thing. That is my style of advocacy. You don't just go hitting hard on people without saying, if we go this way, if you're not finding solutions, then your advocacy is not complete. It's not all about being an attack dog, being confrontational. It's about coming down to find solutions as well. Um, so, how do we ensure existing laws against sexual exploitations are implemented? Permit me to talk about sexual exploitation a bit here. Now, what does that mean? First, before I go into the laws, it means taking advantage of people. Sometimes it's taking advantage of the girl, it is taking advantage of the boy, it is taking advantage of the woman, it is taking advantage of the man. know whenever we talk about sexual exploitation, the first thing that comes to people's mind is the girl, the woman. It's all about the ladies. But yes, trust me, men are also sexually exploited. Depends on the circumstances you found yourself. I've heard people talk to me about their madams, as we call them, exploit the drivers, the house boys, the megats, and the all of that. So it goes beyond women. It's all about different persons and at different times. It is possible that because people mistake exploitation, the first thing you hear from people is, oh, but she didn't complain or he didn't complain. Oh, but we used to do it. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter whether the first time you had consent, if at the second and third and fourth and fifth times that you're engaging in that exploitation didn't have consent, it is what it is. You are sexually exploiting someone. So the fact that you hitherto had consent does not mean that the consent is continuous. I'll give an instance with issues about rape. Recently, in the US, a court said that it is possible you have consent for, but midway in, if the consent person says stop, I no longer give consent. That is where it ends. Anything afterwards, you are in violation of the person. So these are the things we need to know. However, what laws do we have? What laws are we even asking people to implement? Trust me, some of the laws are no longer fit for purpose. They are no longer fit for purpose. Some of the laws ask so much of the victim without considering the scar and the emotional trauma the victim is suffering at the time. Now, again, I'll give you an instance. Somebody will ask you, oh, that lecturer has been exploiting you. Why did you not report? You went to his office the first time, the second time, the third time. Are you a mumu in our local parlance? Why did you keep going there? They forget that there's this undue pressure, that there's this influence the lecturer has on the students. So at that time, it's affected the psyche of the students. So the student probably gives in not because the students consented, but because there's a hold on the students. So he's given in, so he's suffering lots of trauma, he's suffering lots of issues at the time. So he or she is not even able to put himself or herself together to start having straight thoughts. Okay. So some of these laws, for instance, somebody is raped in our Nigerian law, it says you have to go do a test, you have to get this, get that, make sure. I think I've lost my screen sharing. Yes. So back to what I was saying. Sometimes we find that what is expected of the victim, based on our laws, they are too much. They are too much to ask from a victim who is already suffering psychologically. I am not a doctor, but I'm sure doctors will appreciate what this means when a person is a victim of such acts and the law wants him or her to prove this and that and this and that. Yes, that is what it is. It is the law. So what am I saying? I am saying that the existing laws are not good enough. So we need to make concerted efforts to see that some of these laws are amended and proper penalties put in place. So we need to do extra. That is why I said initially that any advocate who is not ready to target the system that are affected, propose policy solutions, may find it difficult to achieve its goals. So you have to target the system, you have to propose policy solutions, and you have to ensure that the laws you're working with are fit for purpose. That is why sometimes people tell you that the judiciary is not helping matters. The judiciary is not helping matters because the law they are working with is not also helping the judiciary. And the judiciary do not make laws. So we need to go back to the House of Assembly, we need to go back to National Assembly to make these laws for to be fit for purpose so that it can as well help what we do. Now, how can advocacy be a part to justice? When you engage in advocacy, you help achieve the following. For me, you give succor to the victims, you raise public awareness of the issue, you push appropriate authorities to act, investigate the case to court. This last part, this third part, is the part where, you know, like I said, I want to use Nigeria as a case study. I found out that a lot of times in Nigeria, authorities who are meant to act on sexual exploitation do nothing about it. They do nothing because they expect the victim to either, like in case of Nigeria, to bribe them. They laugh at the victim. They laugh at his people. You know, I've witnessed a situation where a lady goes to report that she's been raped. The first thing the policeman asked in pidgin English was, "Waiting carry you go the man house." Is that a question you should be asking a rape victim? Waiting carry you go the man house? Absolute nonsense in my opinion. So you find out that our people are not ready. And of course, before you get a fiat to prosecute a matter, you have to go through the hurdle. So every of criminal charge is usually meant to be prosecuted by the Attorney General or the police. The most of the magistrate and high courts is usually the police before the Attorney General. So if the authorities like the police are not ready to investigate, we're going to lose something. So advocacy is an important tool for us to be justice. So we talk about it, we talk about it, we talk about it, we spread the word, we continue to, volunteer to do something good. We will continue to volunteer because we believe in a cause, because we know that it is important that we go down deep to the issue, because we know that the issue affects people, because we know people have become victims and they will be more victims if not is done. Okay. Now, the next thing people want to see in terms of justice is that the guilty persons are punished for their crimes. Yes, it's also good to see that the guilty persons are punished for their crimes. But sometimes you may not get this punishment. You may not get this punishment because the law, perhaps the evidence you need to get this person punished, you're not able to get it. The court deals specifically, with evidence. So where there's no evidence, you might not get that person to be punished. But what do I tell people? Sometimes, even if the court does not succeed in punishing the person or you do not get justice through the court, if you get succor from the abuser admitting, whether in court or elsewhere, that he knows he knows what he's done, he's not happy he did it, and he's apologizing for doing that. Yes, he's not saying it in court. Yes, he is not being punished in court because he didn't have evidence. But the fact that he has admitted and has profusely apologized for his acts to the victim, that for me sometimes can be succor. That for me can be closure. There's a whole lot of gamut to the word justice. Now, for some people, for the diehards, if somebody is not jailed for 50 years, if not castrated for raping, then there's no justice. People want to cut off your limbs or arms for doing certain acts just to be happy that they've seen justice. Whichever way it is, I am important about finding closure for the victim. That is the message I try to put out there. In seeking for justice, in using advocacy to seek for justice, you must first of all consider truly the victim. The victim or the victim should be the first people to be worried about whenever it comes to seeking justice. Like I tell people, you have to provide a support system that will help the victim to heal. If the victim is not healed, or if the victim is not healing, whatever justice you pursue may not be enough for the victim. Remember, I said that some of the laws we have in Nigeria, for instance, are not fit for purpose. If you have that in mind, and the law says that a victim of this sexual abuse, either in school and all that, will get 2 years imprisonment, 3 years imprisonment, 5 years imprisonment. For the student, that might not be enough. The student wants the lecturer to be castrated. I'm telling you, that's what the student will want because she suffered pains. He has suffered pains. So what do you do in that situation? You have to, first of all, in finding that justice, you have to, first of all, find a way of supporting the victim to heal. It is very important that the victim heals. Give the victim a safe and comforting environment so that, you know, the healing process can go on. Don't forget, and I'm sure my colleague, the lawyer, will appreciate this and he will understand this. Do not give unrealistic assurances by trying to reassure survivors and victims. Some lawyers do this, some people do this. I am not saying be sympathetic, but while you're being sympathetic, do not give unrealistic assurances. For instance, I know what the court will want me to bring when I want to prove a case of rape. Once I have lost those evidence, maybe because of time, failure to go to the hospital to do a check, failure to get Siemens, the well, if it's rape or any kind of sexual assault, if there was penetration, failure to put all these things together for the purpose of going to court. I know that if we don't have this, it may be difficult to get a conviction. It will be unrealistic of me just because I want the victim to feel very good, tell the victim, don't worry, we're going to get him locked up for the rest of his life. When I already know that this may not happen because my first evidence that I need, I have lost them because of time and all that. So it is important that whoever is going to give support, whether legal or psychological support to the victim, understands the exact things to say to the victim. Because while you're pursuing justice, again, like I said, you have to be sure that the victim understands, appreciates, heals. Like the first thing I do when I'm talking to victims is I give them, first of all, remind them that whatever may have happened is not a fault of theirs. That first assurance. So the policeman that said to the lady that came to report a sexual um, violence and said to him, no, you carry your leg, go there. Now, the students that comes to report a lecturer and people are saying, why should you do this and that? For crying out loud, that lecturer is a teacher in school. The student is a student. The student won't stop going to classes. The student won't stop going to school because of the lecturer. So that exploitation is what, as far as I'm concerned, exploitation is what it is. You don't do it under any disguise. You don't have any reason to do it. Okay. So for me, really, it's we can't stop talking about advocacy as a tool. So we continue doing that. All I ask for people is volunteer to do something, volunteer to get something done, spread the word, embrace the diversity. Don't forget, you have to understand the subject. You have to understand the subject you want to advocate about. If you don't understand it, read, go in, check. Okay, for sexual exploitation, there are things that you need to understand, okay, to know the difference between when somebody is truly reporting sexual exploitation and when someone is perhaps looking to blackmail someone. That is why I usually tell volunteers, don't be quick to jump and start investigation. Don't be quick to jump and start getting to the alleged oppressor, saying that you have facts, because they can easily switch these things if you're not careful. So you have to understand what you're doing and look at how best to get the best out of the situation. So I call on youths to keep doing what they are doing. SofaDonDo people, you're doing a great job. I am still a volunteer. We'll push on. Recently, I know that there's a bill that's been passed, moved by Senator Omar Gege and assented to by the president. I think it's been assented to on the on sexual exploitation of students in schools and what is expected of lecturers. So that is a good one. We may sometimes think that our voices are not being heard. No, our voices are being heard. There was a documentary done by BBC about sexual exploitation by lecturers. We were part of it as SofaDonDo. Some of you didn't know it then because it was a covert operation. Yes, that is how it is. Some of these things are done. So don't think that you are not being heard. You are being heard. So as much as you can, just keep as much as you can, just keep doing the right things, keep pushing up. We'll get justice. Don't feel um, don't feel disillusioned when you don't get justice in courts. The court is not the only place where you get justice. If you get it from the society, it is fine. If you get it from the people around, if you change the policy, it is fine. If you set the new agenda, it is brilliant. Everything does not be from the court. We need to have that in mind. So thank you. I didn't take too much of your time. Thank you very much. I'm here if anybody has any question. I am happy to answer the questions, please. Thank you. Blessed, are you there? Is your mic off or is it on?
Thank you very much, Barrister Rinze. I know you did justice to that. And I'm sure young people, even if you did not get anything from what he said, he asked a question when he started. Do we have young people who are desirous to make the future better? I'm sure if you're able to answer this question yourself, you'll be able to drive change. So if we have any question, please, you could drop it for Barrister Rinze. Okay. Otherwise,
okay. Sorry, moderator, just a minute. Mali, can you talk? Or meet yourself and talk.
Yes, okay. I'd like to ask the lawyer, the barrister, how do you go about asking questions without making the victim feel a type of way? Because there are times you're trying to investigate, you're trying to get questions so that you can know you want to start how to start an investigation. How do you go about asking the questions in a sensitive manner that will not trigger something or make the victim to go back on his or her word? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. To be honest with you, this is not an act everybody can take on. It's not something everybody can do. I mean, people are skilled. They are professionals. That is why you have people who are counselors, people who understand the situation. You have psychologists. I won't tell you I am a professional when it comes to that. No, I am not. Some people are very well suited to do that job. My advice is always, for instance, in SofaDonDo, what I used to tell them then is when you find there's someone who you think has that who has been sexually exploited, and of course, you know the way they usually will not want to start talking immediately. Let your state coordinator know, let your national coordinator know. They will hand over to the experts who know how to get this information. Sometimes people may not even talk in your first meeting, in your second meeting. It is also not good for me from my own standpoint. I usually don't keep You have to know when to keep an expressionless face. For some ladies, when you get into it too much, like you're so curious, they try to withdraw some certain facts. They try to keep away some facts from you. But if you keep like you're nonchalant, they'll be like, oh, he's not taking me serious. She's not taking me serious. So it is really a hard one. So I will leave it for those who are professional enough. Let's not be jack of all trades when it comes to support system for victims and getting the required information. Just pass them on. I know there's a counseling unit. Just pass them on to the counseling unit of SofaDonDo or counseling unit of any organization that is patterned to deal with things like this. The point is, let us not think we can do it. Otherwise, for some people who go into get trying to find out or get some information, you might push the victim far away because we don't have the requisite skills. Some people are skilled. I wouldn't want to take up the job of someone who is skilled enough. So I'll ask each organization, each agency, each NGO to have a forum or people in their organization that can do the questioning. Yeah, that's it
Okay, I
from me.
think that's all. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Barrister. Okay, so very quickly, our next speaker of this, Pascal Meruchimezie. I hope he's here. Okay. So Pascal Meruchimezie
Okay,
will be.
I
All right.
have a question on chat group. Sorry, can I just quickly attend to that one? Someone says Charles asked, how do we overcome social stigma and stereotyping associated with sexual victims? How can we advocate for counseling from government? Okay, let me just quickly rush this now. Um, the truth of the matter is, like I said, sometimes the way we respond to these people, the way we respond to the victims also affects other victims or people who suffer the same thing. The stigma is just so much, starting from, like I said, from the unprofessional conduct of the policemen, the unprofessional conduct of our parents, unprofessional conduct of our friends, the way and manner we all, because we've all done that once or twice, or we've done that in the past. Sometimes when your friend is saying, oh, this happened to me, like I said during my presentation, the first question you ask is, why did you go to his office? For crying out loud, that's my lecturer. I can go to his office to get information. I can go to his office to get something. That is a stigma. You shouldn't be asking people that. So the volunteers need to push this, message in. Don't stigmatize people. There's nothing wrong with I've gone to see a friend who is a guy or a girl. I mean, that is supposed to be a friend. What happens thereafter shouldn't be blamed on the student. People say, why should she come to class wearing a miniskirt? For crying out loud, if there's a code of conduct, if there's dressing code in your school, please, Mr. Lecturer, send the students out. It's as simple as ABC. Don't come to my class. In Nigeria, I don't know, Pascal may bear me witness. If you study law, you're wearing white and black. So we were like choir people all through for 5 years. Even choir, they've changed their dressing. So white and black, we were more like waiters. Okay. If you are not wearing white and black, the lecturer tells you to leave. So it's as simple as that. That's the code of conduct as a dressing for law students. So if there's a code of conduct or dressing for a particular department or school, Mr. Lecturer, all you need to do is simply tell the student to walk out of your class. It's your right to do that. It doesn't matter if people are against the law or if people feel they have freedom to wear anything. It is a law. I tell people don't disobey laws. All you need to do is work to change the law if you don't like it, or not to disobey it. So we have to stop stigmatizing victims. We have to find a way to get government to place counselors in various hospitals. I go to a general hospital in Lagos.
Okay.
I usually don't find counselors. Most of the counselors you're left with nurses to counsel you. And then the nurse is counseling you, the nurse is telling you, oh, you shouldn't have done this and that. That is not proper counseling. we need to have certified counselors. We need to have professionals in our general hospitals. I mean, those are the easiest places to go to.
Okay. For time's sake, those who have questions might have to hold on till later, so the speakers cannot speak at once. All right. So very quickly, the second speaker is Pascal Chimeze. He will be speaking on campaigning against sexual exploitations in our schools, sensitization, engage school authorities, parents, youths, etc. So I'll quickly do his bio. Pascal Chimeze is a national global legal practitioner, radio host, volunteer, and public speaker. He's also a writer, researcher, media consultant, etc. Pascal Chimeze is a versatile young professional and Nigerian patriot that continues to follow his passions with an unwavering zeal to impact his country. This dedicated, loyal, passionate, and kind-hearted lover of God and silent goal-getter of a breather is an alumnus of the University of Benin, Benin City, and believes in human capital development and capacity building, especially of the youth and younger generation. He hopes to make the world much better before he leaves it. So with that, let's make welcome Pascal Chimeze. Pascal, you're on.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Pascal.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
All right. Good morning. Yes.
Right. Good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pascal Chimeze, and it's indeed a pleasure to be here. I must say that it's very possible for there to be a repetition of some of the things that has already been highlighted by the previous speaker. But we'll try as much as we can due to time constraints to avoid some of the things. If along the line there are questions, if there are things we cannot address, perhaps we'll just leave them for the questions session. I'm supposed to speak on campaigning against sexual exploitation in our schools, sensitization, engaging parents, school authorities, and the youths. So we'll just have a very, very quick outline. For me, this discourse will just take a look at some definition of key terms, understanding various concepts. We'll look at the general effects, and then we'll take a look at the engagement proper, and then the way forward. As far as I'm concerned, campaigning is, for me, it's more than just the advocacy thing. The barrister already spoke about advocacy and how we go about sensitizing people. But campaigning against sexual exploitation is not just on the advocacy, it's not just on the sensitization. There is an action plan for me.
Hello, Pascal.
Yeah.
Please, can you be audible a bit? There are complaints of people not hearing you.
All right, am I better now?
Can you be more audible? All right.
Is it better now?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. Now, like I was saying, for me, campaigning is all encompassing. You have the sensitization, you have the complaint and your reporting mechanism, and then you have your action plan. Okay, we know sensitization in very brief terms means getting somebody sensitive towards a particular concept. So you raise an awareness, you get them sensitive, and then you inspire them to take actions against such whatever gospel you are preaching, which in this case is sexual exploitation. Very briefly, sexual exploitation, borrowing a leaf from what the barrister has already said, means exploiting someone else sexually. Now, there are several causative factors, there are several things responsible, but to appreciate the concept of sexual exploitation, we must understand that it flows from this scenario where somebody has an advantage over another. Okay. So, lecturer, for example, as a lecturer, you are in a position of authority, you're in a position of influence over the other person. So by the time you take actions or you make and you already have a underlying sexual expectation. Okay, various international groups, various international organizations, national, even local, are going ahead to impute that it is not just the actions of identity. Okay, I still get the feedback that I'm not clear. You can hear me, please just wait.
You have a lot of static.
Maybe you should talk without the earphones. Hello, Pascal.
Yes, I'm talking about the earphones now. It's not better.
Okay.
I think your earphones might still be on.
All right.
Well, go ahead. Let's see. Yes.
Okay. If you can hear me, just wave or drop a comment or you can. Earphones are off now, and I'm trying to be as audible as I can.
Yeah, I think it's better
Much
now.
better now.
All right, thank you. Like I was saying, as far as sexual exploitation is concerned, it's basically abusing your privilege that one has over another, either by virtue of your position, by virtue of your victim's position, and much of it. Let's just quickly run through, since I don't have so much time, and the whole technical issues are coming in. Engaging our schools or school authority. Quickly, the school authority here does not naturally restrict itself to just the university setting. Of course, we know that the incidence of sexual exploitation spans across or goes across board. Every educational institution, be it primary, be it secondary, be it in the university. In fact, for some of us which have been a part of advocacy over time, we understand that it is very, very disappointing, very disappointing for at the level of reports you get, even at the primary school stage. You hear students who confide in you, telling you that their parents, their guardian, or whoever is supposed to watch over them is actually one who is exploiting them sexually. And we have same for secondary schools. We have same for tertiary institutions. Perhaps we appreciate better the tertiary institutions scenario because of the ability of victims in tertiary institutions to come out and speak up. All right, and perhaps because the campaign at that level is much higher. And just a quick observation for us, while we were trying to have sensitizations even in primary and secondary schools, you understand that the procedure, the process, the bureaucracy is just too much. I know at the point we had to go get call it consent from the Ministry of Education. We get to the schools, the principals and the school authorities at the primary and secondary schools do not exactly give you this work from in hands, either because they feel there's no much time or they feel it's not something the students should hear, considering the fact that it's related to sexual activities and all of that. So these are some of the challenges we might have to come back to this before the end of the presentation. But then engaging school authorities goes a long way. School authorities have a whole lot of role to play. In the university setting, for example, we have school policies, we have university policies, and some of these universities, point blank, come out to tell you they do not encourage any form of sexual relationship between lecturers and students. But most of these things, like the barrister earlier said, are best or maximally on paper. You do not have much implementation of such. You do not have penalties for such actions, and it leaves the harder work on those who are advocating against sexual exploitation. It leaves a whole lot of duty on victims of sexual exploitation. The incidence of sexual exploitation in the university setting has a lot of positive factors. You have persons who are trying to racketeer admission. You have persons who are trying to either buy exam scripts, buy exam questions. You have people who, for one reason or the other, cannot control their own sexual libido as lecturers, and they try to take advantage of any or every student that walks in scared. And of course, we know that sexual exploitation is not just one-sided, it is multifaceted. You have it towards from the females to the males, you have from males to females, you have even amongst students, those in higher classes, the older students trying to exploit the younger students. Okay, so it's quite rampant, even in the school authorities, and school authorities have a whole lot to do if at all sexual exploitation will be curbed at that level. It is sad that even after, take for example, the BBC awareness that was released some time ago, some lecturers being suspended, some being subjected to investigative panel. It is sad to hear, to not appear at this point that some of these lecturers have been investigated and found guilty. Okay, so the system entirely could be flawed. The system, even in the tertiary institution, the system outside of schools is not helping matters. Okay, and like I said earlier, the campaign does not go about sensitizing. We have the action plan, we have the complaint and response section. And if all of these are not put in place, campaigning against sexual exploitation in our tertiary institution, in our primary or secondary schools, will not be something that could be easily done. Okay, and with regards to parents, I will try to be as fast as I can. But with regards to parents, we know that parents have a whole lot to do against the fight or in the fight against sexual exploitation. First, we know that even by statistics, that a lot of perpetrators of the sexual exploits against the younger ones are relatives. They are blood relatives, they are guardians, they are people who have been placed in position of trust. And the question you keep asking yourself is, if the one who should watch over the child, if the one who should watch over the youth, if the one who should watch over the victim is actually the perpetrator of the crime, where else would they find succor? Okay, and aside the fact that a large percentage of those who perpetrate these crimes are either bloodlines or parents or guardians or relatives, we also have the attitudes of parents towards these ones when they come home to complain. At the point when we went to some schools to sensitize secondary school, around here, I don't want to mention it, you know, one student walked up to us after the sensitization and said, sir, this is the issue I had. She reported that her own parents, her own father, has been trying to, you know, take advantage of her. And then eventually, when she complains to the mother, when she complains to any other person involved, nobody decided to listen here because they just assume that her father or her parents or whoever she's alleging such a crime or action against is too good to do that, or she is too small to appreciate what is being done to her. Okay, so these are some of the issues we have. You know, eventually, if you are exploited sexually and you know there is no one to run to, you go home, you complain, nobody believes your story. They either think you do not understand what you're saying, or you are ill motivated, or the person you're complaining about doesn't have the tendencies of carrying out this action they are putting against them. They just don't take it for granted. And then you have the challenge of persons who have been exploited sexually, who run to their parents, and then the parents don't do anything about it. Their parents either even encourage you to shut up, just to save the family from whatever shame or stigma. They tell you to keep quiet, they tell you to just keep calm. You know, and it's sad because all of these play a very serious role in escalating the incidence of sexual exploitation that we now have in our society. Quickly on the part of youth, the question of who is a youth continues to rise here and there. And the Nigerian National Policy of Youth has said that youth basically is with regards to individuals between 18 and 35. So it explains for why on the lighter note, you have people with 3-4 children, even in our local villages and communities, come out to say they are part of the youth and all of that. Okay, it might not be a very wonderful side, but let me part of it. But generally speaking, if you're up to 15, if you're up to 14, I don't want to believe if you're up to 40 or if you're within 40, you will still be regarded as a youth. For me, as far as I'm concerned, you will still be regarded as a youth. Okay, but then what role do we have to play in our fight, in our campaign against sexual exploitation? So the medium of campaign has already been highlighted by the previous speaker, but it is not enough to know how to campaign. It is better to pick up these campaign measures and actually utilize them. So that is the first call on every youth, every member within this category, this age bracket, because we know that with all due respect to the older generation as the younger generation, they do not have the requisite energy, they don't have the requisite interest to expose to some technological advancements that we have. Okay, they don't have some of these issues, these exposures that we have in the youth. So it behoves you to actually pick up some of these. We still have the energy. I like to hear Christians say that the glory of the youth is the strength. We have the energy to campaign. We have the energy to set it up. We have the technical know-how. We take up some of these things. However, we know there are challenges, both in schools, parents, amongst youth. Primarily amongst them is the fact that the society does not even give you the enabling environment to even be a better person before you start talking about campaigning against societal ills. You consider somebody who is yet unemployed, who does not have food on his table. It's difficult to actually engage them in a campaign. Okay, you have persons who, for whatever reason or the other, when they identify themselves with this kind of cause, their parents or society begins to lay down we will come after even about sexual exploitation, even in our churches and mosques. The way people consider you is as though you are call it an infidel, call it a blasphemer, and these are all issues that we continue to face. What is the way forward? What is the way out? Just to be as quick as I can, I'm trying to summarize some of these issues, but I would appreciate any question or clarification in the question section. I'm already beginning to see some questions already. After the presentation, we'll address them. What is the way out? First, it is my opinion that whoever is on the way to either advocate the sexual the societal ill or clamor for a better society has to be a better person. If you are not good enough, you may not be able to correct certain things in the society. The previous speaker has already highlighted, I think, during the question section, that even as advocates, we must understand what we are advocating against. If you do not know the ills, if you don't know the entire scope, the nature of sexual exploitation, you cannot go about campaigning. Okay, so you first have to build your individual capacity, expand your knowledge, take up certain courses, have an interest in some of these things. After you have built yourself and you have built you have developed yourself to a certain degree, then you take up the various campaigning measures, your social media, your various social media handles, the radio presentation. I know as a media consultant, some of us have been able to go on air, make certain advocacies about some of these issues. But then when they call on you, SofaDonDo is trying, I must say, but then the harvest is much and the laborers are few, very, very few. So engage your next door neighbor, engage your friends. How many persons have you told about the essence of advocacy against some of these societal ills, the essence of advocacy against sexual exploitation? And then do not be afraid of facing the circumstances that come. Whatever consequences that follow, we must be willing to embrace them. Take, for example, in tertiary institutions, you hear things like, oh, if I complain, I might not graduate. If I complain, I might not pass this course. If I complain, this will happen to me, that will happen to me. Back then when we were in school, we knew that on more than one occasion, when we tried to do what we call the aluta against certain misconduct on the school level, on the individual class level, you have a lot of people come around you telling you, yes, let us do this advocacy, let us do this campaign, let us do this protest. But by the time you set out on the street, you are alone. All right, and then the hammer, if it is to fall on you, falls on you alone, and then these are some of the issues we know. But then do not be afraid of just taking it up, because the more you shy away from the consequences that come out because of the ills in the society or the dilapidated state of affairs in the society, nobody will speak up. Okay, just last week we were talking about protesting where we are. Here in Calabar, the youth being able to keep protesting against certain government policies. Fortunately, we know we are continuing to we have continued to advocate youth empowerment in leadership and governance and all of that. Sadly, some of us who have opportunities to be close to government corridors or to even be in government have not completely utilized these privileges and have gone there to dump the essence of moral age and opportunities that and trust that have been restored in us. Okay, but then we cannot stop. The advocacy will just have to continue. Parents will get to know better. Teachers, students will get to know better. By the time they are able to sensitize, we create a good complaint and response mechanism where they tell us their problems without the fear of stigmatization, without the fear of being witch-hunted, without the fear of being called against. And then finally, we take actions together. We campaign against sexual exploitation, both in the university setting, in the tertiary institution, primary and secondary schools. We then find real meaning. And for me, these are some of the ways we can go about campaigning against sexual exploitation and then engaging people. I would appreciate questions now and try to address them as briefly as I can. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Pastor. But the questions will come later.
All right.
Come later, yes. All right, thank you very much. So if you didn't get anything from Pascal said you need to be a better person to be able to correct any issue in the society. All right, up next is Magdalene Eyoma. She's a TED speaker and she'll be addressing the youth on sexual exploitations and ways to stay afloat. Magdalene Eyoma is a broadcaster who's also passionate about gender issue, development, and advocate of sexual and gender-based violence, SGBV. She's a serial volunteer who's part of several advocacy groups and NGOs, including SofaDonDo. All right, you're on, Magdalene.
Okay, thank you very much, Chinatu.
All right.
It's a pleasure being here, and I thank God for being a part of this maiden edition of the webinar. I'll just go straight to the point because I know we don't have time. Educating the youth on sexual exploitations and ways to stay afloat. I've heard the first and second speakers, but they've not really defined what sexual exploitation is. It is an act or acts committed through non-consensual abuse or exploitation of another person's sexuality for the purpose of sexual gratification, financial gain, personal benefit or advantage, or any other non-legitimate purpose. It can also be, for our purposes and aims, it can also be defined as an actual or attempted abuse of a position trust for sexual purposes, including but not limited to threatening or profiting monetarily, socially, or otherwise. So I hope that covers that. For the examples of, we've been talking about sexual exploitation on and off, and it's just about rape and violence generally. But what are other examples, other relatable examples of sexual exploitation? One of it is observing another individual's nudity or sexual activity, or allowing another to observe consensual sexual activity without the knowledge and consent of all parties involved. This basically says that even when consent is given and somebody, is there to observe, or this is something that's supposed to be a private time, and then somebody just decides to invite somebody else to watch when sex is happening, and that's an exploitation because it's opening one person to another person who is not part of the content given. There's also non-consensual streaming of images, photography, video, or audio recording of sexual activity or nudity. Prostituting another individual, of course, this is very clear. Exposing another's genitals in non-consensual circumstances. A lot of our youth today, a lot of people today, let me not limit it to youth, a lot of people today are into the habit of exchanging their private parts. You find ladies sending their pictures of their breast and their vagina to men who are asking for them for whatever purpose. And at the end of the day, and of course the opposite too, you find ladies asking the men, "Can I see your penis?" And I'm using the proper terms. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it because I believe we are supposed to use the right words, being that using PP, all those terms to just sugarcoat and cover up what is not even a bad word, start with, is part of why we have a lot of rape cases, especially amongst the younger ones. Now, back to what I was saying. When a man sends the picture of his penis to a lady and she decides to share it with other people, share the picture with other people without his consent, then that is an act of exploitation. Mainly exposing another individual to a sexually transmitted disease or virus without that individual's knowledge is a form of sexual exploitation. Inducing incapacitation for the purpose of making another person vulnerable to non-consensual sexual activities and acts of exploitation. And then, of course, the one that concerns us in SofaDonDo, sex for grade. It's a very big act of sexual exploitation. I know that when I use the mask to the office, I use it a lot because I think it's part of the advocacy. It's supposed to generate questions. The stuff I don't do mask. It's supposed to generate questions, and I get that. I'm very willing to listen to people who come up to me, walk up to excuse me, to ask what the hashtag is all about, and I tell them that stuff I don't do is an advocacy group that stands against sex for grades and grades for marks. marks for grades, and they don't understand what it really means. And I have to go further to explain to them that, okay, there are times when a lecturer um, starts to make advances as an individual, and these advances might just be seen as something casual, but it is against the ethics of the profession for a lecturer to approach a student for any sexual relationship. And then, if that lecturer is directly involved in teaching the student would want to say yes, want to consent, because the student is afraid for his or her grade, and would that is exploitation. You're exploiting that child, that student, because you think that, okay, or you want that student to go under the impression that when the student is having sex with you, it means it's in exchange for marks. I just try to use basic terms to get that advocacy across. But people just, there's this habit we have in Nigeria. We talk down on a lot of sexual abuse, and it's a problem that I know that SofaDonDo is also trying to tackle. We all need to tackle it as individuals, otherwise we're in a mess. It's something that you will find underage children talk about very casually. It's very painful. I tell people I have over 600 children because I'm in the children's department in my church. And I get to hear a lot of things that they say. You would find a 12-year-old walk up to you and say, oh, so boy, female, so boy wrote a note to me. He's asking me to be his girlfriend. And you ask the child, what do you know about boyfriend and girlfriend relationship? And the child will just say, it's just when you're the special friend of the person. This thing cuts across ages and age grades. If we do not tackle it from the very beginning of childhood, it is going to graduate into when people grow into get into the university, and of course they'll think it's normal, they'll think it's part of what it should be, but we should really, really push against this. Okay, so what can sexual exploitation actually look like? Recording images or audio of sexual activity, intimate body parts, nakedness is part of what sexual exploitation is in practical terms. Distributing images or audio, I've talked about this already. Revenge pornography. A lot of times people have consensual sex and then they record it for whatever purpose. And when there's a fight, there's a separation, one party now decides, okay, I'm going to use this to blackmail the other party, and releases these things into the net, the social media. It just circulates. That's a form of sexual exploitation because the other party hasn't given consent. And then, of course, viewing another person's sexual activity, exposing someone's genitals without their consent. I've also spoken about this. How can we avoid sexual exploitation? I'm just rushing over it so that I stay within time. How can we avoid sexual exploitation? Constant education is key, as some of the things already mentioned may not have been viewed as exploitation before now. By flyers, posts. I know that SofaDonDo is doing a lot of this. Blessed, thank you so much for this. Because I know you are always on the publicity angle. You are always thinking of ways to generate content, and that's part of education. Prevention of exploitation is not as easy as it may sound, but we have to take deliberate steps to ensure that the risk is reduced. What are the steps that we can take? We can, okay, at the seminar we had, the training we had at Red Cross office here in Calabar, the Cross River State chapter, there was something that was raised, and I said that even as I did a diploma because so that I could have a background in media. I did a diploma with Unical, and one of the things I used to do, I knew some of the lecturers I had, and even when I knew I could stop them from their advances, I could stop their advances. I did not take it lightly that I could also be a victim of sexual exploitation. So each time I want to go to any lecturer's office, I'll be like, oh, please, can you come with me? Let's go to so person's office. Not for anything, for my safety. It's something as simple as that. We can prevent sexual exploitation. Do not go to yes, you need privacy one-on-one time with your lecturer for sometimes, but also if a lecturer has made advances at you, also have to play your part, do your part, go to the lecturer's office with somebody. When there's somebody there, the lecturer would not find it so easy to do anything. If it's via messages, ensure that you tell the lecturer that your parents or somebody has access to your phone, and whatever message is being shared is seen by a lot of people. And this would, I think, reduce the number of times or reduce a bit what the advances the lecturer would make. And then on the part of the lecturer, I know that the national coordinator wrote something here on the chat here that some of the students go to the lecturers to request for text in exchange for better grades. How can the lecturer overcome this? One time, I know some time ago in the cultural chapter, one of our meetings or something, Colonel Ella had mentioned that a lecturer can walk a student out of his office to avoid issues. Paulo Obeche has, I think that's his son, Obeche, had also mentioned something like that. You can walk the students out and then go a step further by reporting state students. The lecturer knows better the lines and the ways in which a student can be reported. So you can curb this menace in our society by playing your part. What other ways can we avoid sexual exploitation? Do not use alcohol or drugs to get someone to do anything. Interrupt jokes about sexual exploitation. There are times, okay, recently in the past 2 months, we've been inundated with a lot of rape cases. And one day in the office, a friend, a colleague, said something like, if you're tired of talking about rape, go and look for somebody to rape now. I was taken aback because I did not even expect such to come from the individual to start with. And then to just casualize rape like that, I did not find it funny. I fled up. I took that time to educate everybody that was around there because the issue of rape should never be trivialized at all. If anybody is making a joke about rape, try as much as possible to cut off that joke before it lands. Do not laugh, even if it's funny. Yes, we're individuals. There are things that would come out funny, but do not even laugh. Don't even encourage it. If you have to be seen as the straight-laced person, does it matter? Does it really matter anybody's opinion? As long as you know that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so challenge images of violence, exploitation in advertising, in advertisements, in everything we see around us. A lot of times especially on Facebook, somebody will come and write something like, "Oh my God, I saw a picture of a child being molested," and you find like 100 comments. Can you share the picture with me? Can you share the video with me? What exactly do you want to see in that sort of video, that sort of image? It starts with us, and that box stops with us. So let us try as much as possible to limit and stop this kind of things happening and going around. For the students, to avoid having to go to the lecturer for text format, study, study, study. That is why you're in school. Nobody forced you to go to school because at the end of the day, you can force a horse to the water, to the riverside, but you cannot force it to drink. Even if your parents say you must go to school and you were forced to go to school, you can actually stop. You can actually try as much as possible to come out your best and then do whatever your passion is. What I don't think there's any facet in our society, there's any area in our society today that education is not cheap. Even if you want to end up an artisan, a mechanic, a vulcanizer. With your education, what you're going to offer is going to be a different level and bit from what the school dropout has to offer. So please study, study, study. Then, of course, report all forms of sexual exploitation to the appropriate authorities. If you do not know, I don't think there's any student that I would say that there's no particular lecturer that is approachable in his or her department. You can talk, if you don't know what steps to go to pass through, you can talk to somebody. And of course, directions will be given. Thank God for SofaDonDo. We have phone lines available. We have a lot of information out there asking for people to contact us for help in any case of sexual exploitation. So we just need to keep pushing on the education, on the exposure, on get sensitization and advocacy. Okay, so for both genders now, I'm not going to be hitting on any one gender because exploitation happens from both ends. Silence is not consent. If you're pushing me to do something and I keep quiet because I am trying not to offend because of what, in the case of a lecturer and a student, the lecturer walks up to the students and starts touching the students back wrongly, or the student starts stripping the lecturer's office. That the lecturer is not saying anything doesn't mean that the person is giving consent. That the student is not saying anything doesn't mean that the person is giving consent. So silence is not consent. Let us be careful. Let us really be careful in all our dealings. Always avoid anything that can be used against you later. This is me talking about the pictures you take, the videos you make when you're involved in sexual activity. You do not know the person's mind. An angel today can turn to be a demon tomorrow, a devil tomorrow. So we just have to be careful at all times. Okay, so how can we stay afloat? Nobody can build your self-esteem. You're your number one person who can build your own self-esteem. You are unique. It is not your fault that you have been targeted. A lot of fine people, fine boys and girls are automatic targets. Let's not even deceive ourselves. But it is the ability to tell yourself that, come, I am confident. I have the confidence that, no, I am not going to be exploited. I am not going to allow myself be exploited. If that confidence, if that's to your self-esteem, once you can build that to the highest peak, you can overcome anything. Read, study, you can write about the abuse, if you've been abused or exploited before. Sharing your experience or experiences can help the next person avoid being molested. So let's just try to, or exploited, let's just try as much as possible to do that which is right. Okay, I think I have like 5 minutes more from the 25 minutes I was allocated. So let me answer Cyril's question. He said, he asked, what is sexual exploitation? Is sexual intercourse between two consenting adults regarded as rape if the lady later reports the man of sexually exploiting her for mark? What of if the student lures the man into having sex? Okay, I think I have covered that, but let me still. Okay, sorry.
Please, you might have to hold on with the question too, because of time.
Okay.
You attend to it later. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So I think I will wrap up by saying, let us all be our number one advocate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Magdalene. I'm sure we gain value. Yes, if you don't remember anything, remember that silence is not consent, and constant education is key in advocacy. So up next is Dr. Kenechukwu Eneli. Yes, he will be doing justice to sexual exploitation as a global issue. Let me just quickly run his bio. Kenechukwu Eneli is enthusiastic and committed professional with 31 years demonstrated history of quality performance and leadership in various medical and civic settings. He has several honors, awards, and publications, such as recognition of emergency assistance by KLM Royal Dutch Airlines on 8 October 2019. Was voted Best Family Physician in Central Texas by Killing Daily Herald in February 2015. Was also National VA Blue. He also won National VA Blue Ribbon Award in May 2011 and Humanitarian Service Award VA Temple, Texas. Apple Award for Humanitarian and Compassionate Care, Michigan Medical Center 2000. He's a U.S. citizen married with 5 kids. He's also a coach at Texas and Daville Soccer Association under 10 and under 16. His hobbies are golf, tennis, swimming, etc. He's a member of SofaDonDo. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's have Dr. Kenneth Chukwu Eneli. All right, sir, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
well,
yes,
thank you,
yes,
Blessed.
sure.
Yeah, thank you, Blessed, for the job you're doing, and thank you very much to all the speakers who have come before me. I'm going to want to share the screen, so I am going to try to do this. Can I share? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, awesome. So sexual exploitation is a global issue. The key is defending the human dignity and opposing sexual exploitation. So every human being deserves the opportunity to live life to its fullest potential. And this requires us as individuals and also as institutions to work towards that realization. And also it requires us to promote a culture that embraces the responsibility to preserve and protect human flourishing. Thus, the work that SofaDonDo is doing right now requires the collaboration with a lot of other people who are committed to defending human dignity also. The definition of sexual exploitation has been addressed. I think that one of the key things that we need to take note of is sexual exploitation means taking the advantage of sexuality. So we're talking about taking advantage of sexuality and attractiveness of a person to make a personal gain or profit. So if the student is taking advantage of her sexuality to take advantage of the lecturer, that's exploitation, and vice versa. And the idea is that each party should be able to resist it. And it is the abuse of a position of vulnerability, differential power, or trust for sexual purposes. So the scope of sexual exploitation is actually very big, and it also applies everywhere. Now, in Nigeria, there might be some peculiarities based on our culture, based on our laws, and so many other things. But it's also there in the United States, it's there everywhere. So there is a National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which is a very big organization that exposes the links of all forms of sexual abuse and exploitation. They are a nonprofit organization, but basically what that organization does is to kind of expose us to the fact that the sexual exploitation is not limited to just child sex abuse. You have child-on-child harmful sexual behavior, compulsive sexual behaviors, and so many other things that you can read. Men's violence against women, and also the information about the neurological impacts of sexual trauma, public health harms of pornography, prostitution, sex trafficking, sexual harassment. All these things are all under that scope. And when you look at it in that broad scope, it becomes a little bit easier to understand what sexual exploitation is all about. So part of what sexual exploitation, what might come under this these categories. You have sex trafficking, sexual abuse and exploitation, and already it has been mentioned that it includes men and boys. And then you have sexual addiction, sexual assault and violence, the coercion, and all the other things. there. Then also you have child sex abuse. I'm just going to go through this because some of these things have been mentioned, and this is just trying to explain the spectrum of sexual exploitation. And then you have male demand for sexual exploitation, child-on-child harmful sexual behavior, illicit massage, men's violence against women, obscenity laws, and so many other things that are mentioned over here. Now, this is really for me the key. Stopping sexual abuse before it starts is really the most important part of this of advocacy. The reason for that is because the trauma or the traumatic effect of sexual exploitation lingers on beyond what you can actually see, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so the key is to get help. If you as an individual feel like you're struggling with issues that have to deal with sexual exploitation, and I've already given you a list of all the things that are there. Now, if you have been somebody who has been a perpetrator, get help. There are a lot of places, there are a lot of resources to get help. And also, it also is very important that we are educating ourselves about what this is all about. And in this day and age of technology, you can easily find that information, on Google and so many other media that you can actually go and research, but you actually also need to know a lot about this. And then, of course, you have the handouts that you can get. Now, for parents, it's also very important because, the act or the attempt, not only affects the victim, but it affects the family and the extended family. And so for me, as a parent, I tell my kids, I say, listen, if you are abducted, or if somebody attempts and succeeds, or once attempts and you allow them succeed, guess what? If you're abducted, the likelihood that you're going to survive from that abduction is very minimal. Now, if you do survive from that abduction or that exploitation, the devastation on that individual is also very, very immense. And so for us as individuals, we have to take that into consideration. When it even crosses your mind that to try to exploit somebody, you have to also try and put yourself in that person's situation and also try to appreciate the immense suffering that that person and their extended family and things around them are going to suffer because of that. Now, I have over here partners and spouses just because, in the whole spectrum, you also have domestic violence, rape, and so many other things that are there. And then faith-based resource. There is no doubt in my mind that, you've heard about, pastors, priests. This does not, stop at any individual. There's nobody that is not vulnerable. And so you have the pastor, somebody comes and say, Pastor, I want you to pray for me. And before you know what's happening, the prayer turns into hallelujah message on the bed. And so, so nobody is vulnerable. However, like the previous speaker mentioned, sometimes to prevent things, you forestall yourself from running into that situation. And part of that will be making sure that, if you're a pastor or if you're a lecturer, that you have somebody there when the student is coming in. So if the student is coming in, you have your assistant or somebody else who's there for that interaction. As a medical doctor, I do not go to examine if female chaperone to be there to watch their process, so that the person can come out and say, I did something that I didn't do. And also it stops me from doing anything that I might want to do because there's a chaperone who's there, who's watching you. And so some of all these things are ways of being able to prevent the sexual abuse or sexual exploitation happening. And it is very important that we try as much as possible to emphasize on the prevention. Now, what do you think would happen if you don't speak up? If you don't speak up about the Sexual Exploitation Act, that perpetrator is now going to now do what? Have another victim. So if you survive, and if it's just for the fact that you are helping to prevent other people from becoming victims of this person, that's why it's also very key that you speak up. Now, luckily, in this era of the Me Too movement, the stigma of reporting has now kind of minimized. It has not gone away, but the stigma is minimized because in the past, people were scared to speak up. But you've now seen celebrities and important people speaking up about it. And now that people are speaking up about it, a lot more people are feeling more confident to be able to come out and speak up about it. And I will strongly encourage people, if there's an attempt, even if it's not succeed, even if they're not successful, if there's an attempt, or even if it's successful, the idea of not speaking up because of stigma, because of anything, is there. However, try and look at the idea of you being able to prevent other people from being prey to that same person. Now, in places they have sexual offender registry and so many other things. And one of the things that SofaDonDo and what came out with that CNN thing is that a lot of all these lecturers that have been doing stuff like this, now they were now put on blast. And so when you put people on blast, or you put universities on blast, and when you have a list of universities that have a policy on sexual exploitation, so if the university doesn't have it, you can put them on blast and say, hey, listen, all these universities do not have a policy on sexual exploitation. All these people do not have a policy on what to do if you have sexual exploitation. That will force those universities, that will force those institutions, if they don't have it, knowing that now you have them on blast, to now go out and now make sure that they have policies that will, that are there to protect our human dignity and the dignity of everybody else. And I'm going to try and move. So the treatment involves a lot of principles. My emphasis or my belief is that prevention is better than cure. And so the advocacy work that SofaDonDo is doing is phenomenal, because what we're trying to do is nip things in the bud. But in terms of treatment, there has to be a zero tolerance for any of this sexual exploitation. And you also have to take a holistic approach based on what I just mentioned, the fact that this spans a whole spectrum of situations. And also there are various ways that this is done, from, the pornographic things, from technology, like the sexting where you take pictures. So there's a spectrum. And it also starts from childhood behavior. You can notice a child who has such tendencies, and you should be able to now, at that point, be able to address it. And then also you have various resource things that you have. You have the International Center on Sexual Exploitation, and then your laws. We had the lawyer talk about, what laws do we have in Nigeria that help to protect people? What are your legislators doing? What are your pastors doing? What are your leaders doing? We have to engage multiple organizations in being involved in that. And of course, we talk about the Research Institute. Now, in conclusion, I try to be fast because I think that the physical and psychological trauma of sexual exploitation is lifelong. And it affects the victims, and it also affects the family, it affects the extended family, and it spans various generations. If you take a census, you'll find out that a lot of what we're dealing with is not just this generation. If you go and research, you find out that that person was abused, or the mother was abused, the father was abused, and this is a generational kind of thing. It spans, it's a wide span. Then the other thing to understand is that hurt people tend to hurt others, and it's high time we stop hurting ourselves. And one of the very, very important things that has been mentioned also here is that charity begins at home. And the change that you're seeking has to start with the person in the mirror. So before pointing your finger at the lecturers, the students, and all that, you ask a person, where do you stand on sexual exploitation? What do you find within yourself that makes you somebody who is either guilty of, somebody who is vulnerable, and what are you going to do to protect yourself? So if you know that you can't resist a fine lady coming to you, have a chaperone. If you know that a lecturer is guilty of exploitation, call them out. Go with somebody. We have to continue to do what SofaDonDo is doing, because it started off, maybe small, but look at how it has grown. And I cannot express my gratitude to the people who started the SofaDonDo, the people who are volunteers, and all the people who are here for what you're doing. And no matter how little it might seem, it will go a long way in getting us closer to the goal of being able to get the word out and being able to make sure that people understand how this issue is very, very hurtful for not just the victims, but all concerned, including our society. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak. And like everybody else, I'll take questions later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Eneli. Okay, I'm sure we gain value too from this. This was knowledge packed. So a few take-homes from what he said. He said to prevent things, you need to stop yourself from running into that situation. And if you don't speak up against sexual exploitation, the perpetrator goes on to have another victim. And we don't want that. I'm sure people have questions for Dr. Eneli, so you just have to drop them and you attend to them later. All right. So we'll go to the last but not the least speaker for today. For this dialogue, Gabrieline Ogude. She'll be speaking on sexual exploitation through the eye of empowered youth. Speaking out. So, Gabrieline Ogude is a BSc holder from the Department of Library Science, University of Calabar. She hails from Enugu State, Nigeria. Gabrieline is a hardworking, resourceful, and industrious young lady. She has exceptional oratory skills and an astute lover of God. She is the owner of Dimas Dishes, a private luxury kitchen domiciled in Lagos. Thank you very much, Gabrieline. You're on. Hello, Gabrieline.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Gabrieline, we cannot see your face. Hello, Gabrieline. Can you move to yes? Okay. All right.
Hi, good morning. Can you see me?
Good morning.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Ogude Gabrieline. I'm a member of SofaDonDo from the Cross I am here today to talk about sexual exploitation through the eye of the empowered youth speaking out. So, as the previous speakers have said earlier, we've actually explained what sexual exploitation is. But I just want to run through this over again, and then we're going to talk about what is youth empowerment and what it means for us.
Hello, Gabrielle. Sorry, maybe you have to take off your headset. Some persons are not hearing you. Okay, you don't speak directly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. As I was saying earlier, we're going to talk about empowerment and sexual exploitation and ways in which empowered youth can speak out against sexual exploitation. Now, as everybody has said earlier, as previous speaker said earlier, we're talking about sexual exploitation. I just want to run through it. When you hear the word sexual exploitation, what it just simply means the act of taking advantage of someone for a monetary gain. Well, it is that according to the World Health United Nations National Organization, 15 million adults and 1 million children are victims of sexual exploitation.
Hello.
Yeah.
Gabrielle.
Can you hear me?
You're breaking. You're breaking. Maybe moves, I don't know. I think your network is not nice at all. And that place is why it's dark right now. We need to see your face.
Is this okay?
Not okay yet.
Is this better?
Okay. Yes, better.
Okay.
All right,
so,
go ahead. Okay.
Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, better. Perfect.
Okay, no problem. So we're going to be talking about sexual exploitation. And as I said earlier, sexual exploitation is simply taking advantage of someone for monetary gain of any kind. And as such, according to the World Health Organization, sexual exploitation is an actual attempted abuse of position of power or trust for sexual purposes, including but not limited to profiting monetarily, socially, or politically from sexual exploitation of one another. Now, when we say about this, in simple nutshell, when we talk about sexual exploitation, we're just saying that it's just a way of exploiting somebody, taking advantage of somebody unwillingly for your own monetary gain. And as such, it is actually a prohibited offense. So in the world, there's about 3.8 million people are victims of sexual exploitation. About 7 in 10 victims were exploited in Asia and in the Pacific region, while 14% were in Europe and Central Asia, and 4% in America. And these victims are also always arrested for these crimes. Now, what are the acts of sexual exploitation? The act of sexual exploitation has meaning demanding sex in context or manner of or making sex a condition for assistance. We hear every day, we hear stories about people saying that he will ask me to get the job, I have to do this, I have to do that. But it's something that happens on a daily basis in our society. And when you go to apply for a job, or someone would have to ask you for sex before an assistance can be rendered to you. You are being the person is actually exploiting you sexually, and as such, we should be known. It should be known that this is sexual exploitation. Prostitution, as Mandela said, when you are being prostituted in order for you to make money for a madam or a boss, that way the act of prostitution is sexual exploitation. 3 is relating to safe sex practices. Now, when you are with somebody, as in the current law that the first barrister that spoke said that consent can be withdrawn any time. Now, in case whereby you are having talk with someone and then the person would not agree to use actually being exploited, also the person was exploiting you. And also forcing sex or making someone have sex without. Now, for someone to force you to have sex, with somebody that's exploited for because you have nothing. And in most cases, most people are actually being exploited are people that are in it for one way, for one gain or the other. I mean, in our society of today, most who are actually being exploited are people that at the end of it, what they're just getting are just material things that they won't sit back and think about. They will just be, okay, fine. So for that reason, because there are no opportunities for them to better their lives and they're not empowerment, that's why sexual exploitation goes on to our youth. Now, we come to ask, please, what is youth empowerment? Well, as I'm going to ask, youth empowerment is the process where children and young ones are encouraged to take charge of their lives by addressing the situations and issues that affect them, and then taking actions in order to improve their access to resources and transform their consciousness through their beliefs, values, and systems and attitudes. So when for us to talk about youth empowerment, I'm just going to simply say that when a youth is empowered, it simply means that that youth has taken charge of his present situation and is looking for ways to actually make things better for their situations. And as so doing, he's speaking and giving hope and bringing change to the environment. And as so, when a youth is empowered, it gives them a voice to talk about it. And that is why today we are here. Because empowered youth, I am an empowered youth. You can be an empowered youth when you're skilled, you are equipped yourself with skills. Good, you've gone to school to notice this. Now we are going to talk about ways in which youth can be empowered. I mean, there are ways that the youth can actually be empowered by one, listening to their voice, and giving the youth the tools to collaborate with each other. Now, when youth are being given the opportunity to actually speak out their voice and do something and bring up a project and they are being supported, that youth is empowered, that youth feels that he or she is important or he or she is valued, encouraging them when they use their passion for good. You can empower a youth by encouraging them to do well, to actually do topics that actually make sense to them. You can give them the reason to believe in themselves. I mean, in our country of today, one of the major reasons we have is that the youth are not given the opportunity to speak up their. That's why most times the youth feels so backward and feels so dejected. If a youth is given the right opportunities to speak up, speak their mind, and then then there's a belief system that trusts in the fact that our youth would actually do wonders, or female, whether you want to, they will have a mindset to actually work. When we have government legacies that support the benefits of the youth, legacies that when it comes to the effects of the youth, everything is later for the way that they have an easy access to ascend grants for. But because such things are not available, there are rises to exploitation, and this way it affects our job. So we're going to talk about ways in which the youth can speak up. The ways in which the youth can speak up sexual exploitation. Now, as an empowered youth, we've talked that youth should be given the opportunity to actually access grants, be heard, and they should be passions for good. Now, when a youth is exploited, what is the next way forward for them to actually come out and become empowered? For this to happen, for a youth, once a youth speaks up, one should know that when a youth speaks up about being exploited, it should not be seen as a thing of a shame, or should not be seen as a thing of stigma. We should accept youth who speak up and then embrace them and give them the necessary support and help that they need, because it's important. It is our circle that will going to give them the strength to speak up and help one another. It's important that when you are especially exploited, you should please one way or the other give them. We shouldn't look at them with so much stigma and so much disgust, or blame them for the fact that, oh, what are you doing there? Or just say something. They need our support one way or the other. And then the youths should be bold. They should be bold, because when these youths are, when they are aware that exploitation has gone on for so long, there should going to be boldness. For you to be able to speak out, one has to be very bold and to talk to someone, to talk to organizations, because right now we have organizations that are against sexual abuse, assault, and exploitation. And as such, our group SofaDonDo is also one of the groups. We have groups like WAIF and Sierra Foundation. Now, when a youth speaks out, even if they want to remain anonymous, we as a group, there should be legal backings to support the youth to move forward and speak for what they want. There should be support when the support system. These youths are bold to express themselves and to tell the world that this is what is going on. Now, also skill development. Now, one of the major ways to curb sexual exploitation is skill development. Is as simple as that. Once a youth is empowered and there is something doing, that youth would be aware and will become more aware that these are the standing and this is what's supposed to happen. So as such, once a youth is empowered and has skills, I equip with skills that will be developed over time, they keep busy. It reduces crime rates. They wouldn't have time for someone to actually exploit them in any way possible. But even as such, youth empowerment programs should be created for youth so that in any way to curb this menace of sexual exploitation. Empowerment programs like fashion designing, cobblery, event catering, or whatever it's concierge services. Because once our youth are busy, the influx or the high rate of sexual exploitation would come down drastically. That is just, and another way for it to curb sexual exploitation is simply education. Now, as mentioned earlier, an act of sexual exploitation is prostituting somebody. Now, most of these people who are being prostituted are poor and uneducated. So, in the case of prostitution, it will simply be this: once someone is educated, and when there is knowledge, and when there is power, when information is life. So when you are being educated, you are being taught that this is this, and this is wrong, and this is right. One will be aware that for anybody who comes to me telling me that this is going to happen, it is wrong, but this is right. So another major way to curb sexual exploitation from the youth is simply good education standard. When a youth speaks up, it should be advised that, one, for those illiterate ones, it should be advised that there should be education, there should be form of education and orientation. So as a group, it is important as our job as SofaDonDo, we've been educating the press, the public every day on the social media pages, and it's a good thing that we are doing to put in more effort so that people will know that sexual exploitation can come in different ways and different formats. And it doesn't just have to be just because it doesn't have just end in a school society or our tertiary universities, the youth on the streets. They see there was something doing, that youth not be looking for somebody to actually look for help or start, come and help me with this. And mentorship programs are advised when a youth has someone that is looking up to this youth will happen that would advise them and look up as a pedestal so that they could be good in life. So as such, in our totality, as an empowered youth, the ways that I myself am an empowered youth, for the fact that before while I was in school, I went for skill acquisition programs. I've learned how to bake and I learned how to cook from someone. But the point is, these ideas or these programs that I've attended made me understand that I could actually be somebody on my own and I can actually work and I can actually make something of myself if only I put in good work and good effort. Now, our youth needs to be told that there is dignity of labor and that hard work is important, that fame doesn't just come all at once. Our youth needs to be empowered on a daily basis. Our needs to be aware that depending on someone will not actually get them anywhere. Our youth needs to know that it is their right to speak out, that silence is not consent, and as such, we should try in our daily lives, and we should encourage the youth that we see on the streets. We should actually find a way to help one another and make it grow. And as such, the issue of sexual exploitation of the youth would come to an end. And above all things, youth empowerment is very important to curb sexual exploitation. Well, for this so far so good. I just want to say that SofaDonDo so far has been an amazing job with educating the youth, but we should do more with our programs and educating, and then let there be a collaborative effort from all agencies so that our youth will be aware that they are the price and they are the number one person, and that they matter more, and that whatever happens, they should learn to speak up, say their mind. And then even if they are too scared to speak up, there are groups there to fight for them, and that they can actually remain anonymous and still speak up their mind. So with these few points, I just want to say thank you to everybody who listened. And then I just want to say that the youth are the future of tomorrow. We are now, and that we are the reason why the economy is going to grow tomorrow. We are the bedrock of the nation. If we as the youth fail, the contribution is always going to fail. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions or anything to make clarifications on top, please drop your messages and drop your questions, and I'll respond to them as I can. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. Gabrielle was SDD volunteer, July volunteer of the month. That was last month. So keep up the good work. Okay, I don't know if we have questions. I think we can take a few. We're rounding up. All right, this is from Cyril Uchenna, Guam. He didn't direct this question to anyone. Okay,
Anybody
Dr.
can answer
Eneli, when a
those
prostitute is... Okay, all right. What is sexual exploitation? Is sexual intercourse between two consenting adults regarded as rape if the lady later reports that the man sexually exploiting her for marks? What of if the student lures the man into having sex? I hope anyone made sense out of that. Okay. He also asked Dr. Eneli, when a prostitute is not paid after sexual foreplay, do we call it sexual exploitation? Can a sex worker be exploited in her trade? All right.
The answer is yes. You see, what I said was, so there are key words. One is consensual, and then the other one is when if the sex, even if it's a sex worker, and there's an agreement that you have, and you do not fulfill your agreement, that means you are reneging on your agreement. I remember what the lawyer said earlier on about even if it's your wife or and they agreed initially, and then midway they decide that they don't agree, then you are expected to pull out. The question then becomes, if it's just the two people that are involved in the action, it becomes your word against mine. And that's where in the past, most of the victims were not adequately addressed, because it's your word against mine. And so how do you prove that the person did not withdraw? How do you prove that the person actually did that? So you do have people who have come and claimed that that they were assaulted. Meanwhile, what they were trying to do was actually now trying to make money. What it does is that it takes away from the actual people who have been victimized, because then people can now claim, oh, that some people is just a false claim. So so to safeguard yourself, the idea is, that's why it has to be an individual thing. The idea is that you have to avoid anything that will put you in that position. So so don't go and solicit the prostitute, okay? And then if you're having something there and you're having problem with your wife, then it's unfortunate, but then at what point do you now bring in the camera, or do you now have a form that is signed that this is consensual? So those are some of the the gray lines. But my vote has always been prevention, because the trauma is so extensive. So you have to try and prevent it, either by having a third party, avoiding it, and of course understanding that what your action or inaction is going to cause a lot of problem for the other person. So don't just be selfish thinking about yourself. Be also sensitive about the other person. So even if you do want to have sex, how will it impact the other person? And if it's going to impact that other person very negatively, that your desire can be quenched just by that feeling or that sensitivity that even though I want to, but it's going to hurt this person. So why do I want to hurt the other person? And that's that's why I say, as individuals, we have to make sure that we are paying a conscious effort, making a conscious effort to check ourselves about what our desires are and how it's going to impact other people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think that is, I'm not sure we still have more questions.
So on the first question, let me just...
I'm not sure we still have more questions.
The first question that Cyril had about lecturer and the student have a consensual, intercourse, and then maybe the student comes back. Let us understand that the lecturer is in a position of authority. So there is no excuse for a lecturer. If you're scared of that, then do not engage in it at all, because the onus is going to fall on the person that's in the position of authority. So even if a student tries to want to do something with you and say, oh, she asked me to do it, once you engage in it, you're at fault. It's just like in the medical profession. If you decide, if a patient comes to you and say, oh, I love you so much, and then I want to do this with you, and you go and engage in it because the patient asks you. If you go to court, you're going to jail because you're the doctor. This patient is is your subject, and that's what they call transference. She can transfer those emotions because this person she sees as a person in authority. So you do not do it. So I think that is simple. Avoid doing it at all, because if it comes out, you as the lecturer who is in a position of authority will be held liable. I hope I answered that question.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Albert. I think you should just do the closing remarks because you're gradually coming to the end.
Okay. So I want to thank everybody for who attended this meeting. To me, this is a huge success, and the discussion we've had is quite informative. I actually learned a lot myself from all this discussion. There was something that Magdalene mentioned, which I think is very important, about sharing sexually explicit pictures. Even if somebody sent it and you share it on any forum, that is trafficking in pornography, child pornography. So we should discourage, if somebody sends you any sexually explicit picture of anybody just to try to send a message, do not share it. Delete it from your phone. People have gone to jail for that kind of thing. All right. And Arenze said something about having professionals like counselors. This is something that I think we as SofaDonDo can engage in, because when we have a case reported, those people are traumatized and they will need counseling. So we will have to engage some counselors in these things. And Gabrielle talked about the youth speaking up. You have to speak up. The culture of silence that we have in Nigeria, or shaming the victim, we need to get rid of that culture. People have to speak up. The youth have a duty to speak up and to engage in this. What we're doing is for the youth. Where are they? We need them to be out there and be carrying this, because this is about them. They are the future of the country. Some of us, we've been there, seen that, done that. This is about the youth. So I think they should step up and do what they need to do. And then prevention, yes, like was said, is better than cure. What SofaDonDo is about preventing this. We don't want to, we don't want to arrest anybody or get somebody arrested and sent to jail. We want to prevent it from happening in the first place. That is why we engage in advocacy and trying to educate people to stop this menace from plaguing our society. I am impressed with the time. This arrangement was, we started to do this this Tuesday, and we were able to carry it out. Thank you, Chinato, for making this happen. That was quite impressive. This was a great success. Our national coordinator for also having sleepless nights, and the national secretary and everybody else. And I cannot forget KPE Son, who's our IT, for making this happen. It's been a huge success, and we're going to grow from strength to strength. SofaDonDo is a unique organization, and I want everybody who's part of this to know that you're part of a movement that is started from the grassroots and is going to grow bigger. There's no going back. And thank you all for being part of this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. There's no going back indeed. And I think that with that, we can call it a day. It was really a moment of learning. So thank you very much. We've come to the end of this Zoom dialogue. So feel free to leave.